Everyone, gently close your eyes. Shift your eye gaze to the third eye, the center of the eyebrows, Jyotishmati, the light of awareness within. Take a deep breath. Exhale. We'll begin today's session with our opening chant. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamayam Mrityorma Amritangamayam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome everyone. What a fantastic evening. Welcome to the 10YEC Youth Excellence Center weekly satsang. And this is the delightful moment that I myself have been waiting for such a long time, to have a panel discussion or a satsang with Sriramji and Shailesh and some of the gurus who have imparted the knowledge and the wisdom of yoga, and make that be my way of life for the past 10-15 years. So I'm sure along with me, all of you are eagerly waiting to listen to Sriramji and Shailesh and many other yoga practitioners to share the wisdom. So what we are trying to do is we are kicking off the applied yoga philosophy that we could apply in our day-to-day life, particularly how this knowledge, the essence of yoga, could empower the today's generation youth to cultivate entrepreneurial and excellent mindset. And so that they could design excellence in the world. That's the purpose that the 10YEC that we represent. And we are an all-inclusive organization. We are part of every organization, and every organization is part of us. So anybody that shares the vision of how to design the excellence in the world by investing in our youth to cultivate the entrepreneurial excellence skills is one among us, and we are one among them. So we're going to introduce the team towards the end of the session. But today, what we are doing this is we are doing this as a panel discussion, where we're going to probe and collectively inquire the different dimensions on the essence of yoga and bring it back to our day-to-day life, and how yoga and yoga way of life can be useful so that we all could lead more of an exuberant way of life. And with that, we have a very distinguished and esteemed panel. Sriram Sarvottamji, I know the fact that Sriramji is here, so many of you have joined from different parts of the world. And then we also have Shailesh Bassani, and I'll have them introduce themselves in just a moment. And along with this panel, we also have Savita Gururaja from Toronto, who's going to be joining me in collectively moderating and also offering her own reflections on her own yoga journey. We're going to spend the first 45 to 50 minutes in listening to the panel and their reflections. And then towards the end, we're going to open up for a wider Q&A. So my sincere request is, everybody, please mute your phones, and let's collectively listen to Sriramji, Shailesh, and other panel members reflections. And then towards the end, we'll also open up for a wider Q&A. So without much further ado, and let me have the panel, Sriramji and Shailesh, introduce themselves. And Sriramji, as many of you know, I regard Sriramji as my guru and my divine. And for the past, it's not an exaggeration when I say that for the past 5 years, almost on most days, I wake up listening to Sriramji's talk, particularly Sriramji's talks on Patanjali Yoga Sutra and Bhagavad Gita Foundations. In fact, I credit to Sriramji for opening the full dimension of yoga within me. Until that time, I was pursuing excellence in some limited finer dimensions of yoga, about the physical excellence and mind excellence. But Sriramji is the one who really opened the complete dimension and my interpretation of yoga. Sriramji, with all pranam. So now that we have you here, what I thought would be a great way to do this is, if you can, while introducing yourself, if you would also offer invocation prayer to Sage Patanjali, it'd be fantastic to have the prayer in your divine voice. For now.
Thank you so much, Sriniji, and thank you all for joining. Sriniji, you are indeed very generous with your words. So let me begin with the Dhyana Shlokam as you requested. Om Yastyakva Rupamadyam Prabhavati Jagato Nekadanugrahaya Prakshina Klesha Rashir Vishama Vishadharo Aneka Vaktra Subhogi Sarvajnana Prasutir Bhujaga Parikaro Pritaye Yasya Nityam Devo Hishas Savo Vyat Sitavimalatanur Yogado Yoga Yuktaha Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacham Malam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakarottam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjaliranatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankhachakrasidharinam Sahasrashirasam Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Srimate Anantaya Nagarajaya Namo Namaha Asmadacharyebhya Sarvebhyo Namo Namaha Om.
Shriramji, you want to introduce quickly about yourself, for those that may not fully know about your whole being?
Briefly, I'm an enthusiastic yoga student. I've had the opportunity and the blessing to study yoga for over 30 years now, and I enjoy every moment of it. And I also enthusiastically share my passion and dispassion of yoga with others. And I have noticed that when I share, and it is also a great learning experience. So we are all learning together, Sangat Chadvam. So that has been my experience, and I'm eager to learn from everybody in this panel and from all of you. Thank you once again, Sriniji, for the opportunity.
Wonderful. And now we also have Shailesh Bassani as the second panel member. And Shailesh has been, I refer to Shailesh as my Pal Guru, and she has been one of my best friends for my college days. And it's very rare that you share your life with someone where you collectively evolve pursuing similar dimensions. In the college, we were just the college buddies exploring all the different celebrations as a youth. But interestingly enough, we all pivoted to exploring the spiritual and the yoga journey right about the same time. I learned so many things, from Shailesh ji, and Shailesh is a very well-known leader in the yoga community, particularly in the Yoga Bharati in the Vyasa. Without much further ado, Shailesh, welcome, and it's such a joy to have you here. If you could, quickly introduce yourself so that we can get started.
Srini, thank you very much. Again, very generous with your words. First of all, I'm very honored to be part of this panel, especially in front of Sriramji, Pranam Sriramji, and there are a lot of other senior teachers here. So very, very honored to be part of this. And Srini summarized my introduction. I think we have been together for a very, very long time. And I'm very, very happy to see where Sriniji is today, because we have seen so many ups and downs in the last 15 years through his life, and to be here together is always a wonderful moment for me. And I'm a Yoga Bharati volunteer and lifelong student, and also very happy to see a lot of people that I've been interacting with for so many years are part of this presentation today. So looking forward to it, looking forward to learn from all of you today. And it'll be wonderful, Srini, if people can turn the videos on. You said mute their audio, but as opposed to just talking to a couple of you or my computer, it would be good if everybody can turn the videos on. To be wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Love it. And then we also have a very special guest, Savita Guru Raja, and she's one of our partners at the 10YEC organization, and she has been with us for the past 1.5 years, and she keeps all of us honest. So Savita Garu, if you could introduce yourself.
Namaskaram, everybody. Savita, and I have been on the yoga journey as an understanding of yoga happened since I started with YEC team. Before it was just one more workout to lose weight kind of a thing. So the full understanding of yoga journey and like how yoga is not just on the mat and off the mat as well. That full circle understanding happened after joining YEC and Sriniji. So that said, I'm here to learn more than ask questions. I think the more you share the knowledge, how to continue this journey without feeling the burden, or how to continue with a lot of joy is I think a challenge in these times. So I'm looking forward for those kind of answers. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you, Savita. And one consideration as a joyful thing, among our group, sometimes we use G, sometimes we use Garu as a moment of respect. And, I kindly request for some of us to make an effort to not use any one of the G or the Garu, except for, we'll probably make one exception for Sriramji, because I know that Sriramji's core being, he always refers to every one of us, as G. So, but what I would basically say is, like, if G is there, it is there. If it's not there, it's not there. Let's not put any awareness to it. So it doesn't mean anything. So with that, let's actually jump right into the discussion. What I wanted us to kind of inquire about is, we want to make this today's exploration of what yoga essence is in terms of practical experience. We want to focus more on the experiential reality, not as an intellectual reality, not as the theoretical reality. So it's just like, how does it impact our lives? So on that note, what I would like us to explore, and Sriramji, I would like you to share with, what does yoga mean to you? And how has yoga shaped or reshaped your life journey? So if you could reflect on your own personal life journey about what yoga means to you and how yoga has become a way of life for you.
Thank you, Sriniji. My yoga journey started very similar to what Savita ji shared. So when I was 11 years old, I saw one of my classmates doing yoga posture. And I thought, wow, that is incredible. I want to do something like that. I want to touch my toes. And when I tried that posture, I was nowhere near it. I thought it requires a lot of dedicated practice, a lot of effort. I want to learn systematically. So that's how my journey of yoga began. Later, I discovered, just like Savita ji, that yoga is much more than just reaching for your toes, right? And my teacher used to describe it very beautifully. Most people's journey into yoga is search for a trinket, find a treasure. I was looking for something very insignificant, touch my toes. But then I discovered a whole new world of yoga that gives much, much more. It is full of treasure. And my own experience and the definition of yoga has been evolving over the years. So in the beginning, I thought yoga was just doing the postures inside the yoga mat. And one day my teacher made this statement. He said, it is not enough if you are a great yogi for half an hour every day inside the yoga mat and a great bhogi in the rest of the 23 hours and 30 minutes. You need to be a full-time yogi, he said. Somebody had asked the question, how much time should I dedicate to the practice of yoga? And this was his response. You need to practice 24 hours, is what he said. And then it made me contemplate. It is indeed true, because when we are doing the practices of yoga inside the mat, it does feel good. But then if it does not transform our life outside the yoga mat, then perhaps the effects of the practice is very limited. And in fact, we can practice the principles even outside the yoga mat as well. And my own experience and understanding of yoga has evolved more than just postures, because when we study the Yoga Sutras, we discover that the practice of postures is a very thin slice of the broad spectrum of yoga practices and the yoga experience. In fact, only 3 out of 195 sutras talk about postures. So yoga is much more. It deals with how to regulate our energies in the body along the meridians, in the practice of pranayama, and it discovers so many secrets about our mind, the mechanics of the mind, the way Patanjali and other great yogis, they have discovered the secrets of the mind and how to harness the power of the mind and how to create a space of inner transformation so that we transform a turbulent mind to a tranquil mind. So that was a great revelation for me. And in fact, all the practices that we do, including practices for the body, such as the postures in the yogasanas, they ultimately serve one objective, namely to bring the mind to a place of peace, calm, tranquility. And from such a place of peace, calm, and tranquility, we can take the best decisions. And as exemplified in the one of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita, Yogastha Kuru Karmani, be established in yoga first, and then do your actions, and then we express excellence in whatever we do. So, of course, there are many technical definitions of what yoga is, right from sage Panini, who gives the definitions of yoga in his Dhatu Pata, where he gives 3 definitions. One of them is joining together, uniting in harmony is yoga, Yujir Yoge. Yuja Samadhav is the second definition, evenness of the mind, tranquil state of the mind is yoga. And the third definition he gives, Yuja Samyamane, which is complete control of the mind is yoga. And of course, when we hear about this, and then when we practice yoga every day, and then when we bring these definitions into experiential reality, that is when the magic happens. And that is what is the journey of yoga for me, to explore and experience the promise of yoga and the definition of yoga. And it is, even now, it is evolving, and I'm enjoying the journey.
What a fantastic way. And the things that I captured are the T to T, the way you said, the trinket to treasure, and the turbulent to tranquility. This is the T to T is what I'm going to take away from this. It's yet another truth that I reveal from the journey from the T to T. That's fantastic. So Shailesh, in your journey, what does yoga mean to you from your life experience? How has yoga shaped or reshaped your life?
Yeah, thank you, Sriniji. And thank you, Sriramji. I think that's a wonderful story. I can relate to some extent. I think probably many of us can do that. A lot of us start with yoga as yoga asanas. Yoga equal to yoga asanas. Have you practiced yoga today? That equals to have you did you do asanas today, right? So my journey started very early in my life, at maybe age 6 or 7, learning from my dad, my first guru. So he was an ardent practitioner, ardent follower of Swami Vivekananda. So that's how it started for me. But for the most part, for many, many years, it was about actually a regular practice of yoga asanas and some pranayama here and there, some meditation, but for the most part, it was asanas, right? And it continued for a long time. And on and off with some other teachers also I studied, but for the most part, my dad was my guru for many, many years. Even when I came to US, I used to very closely talk to him for many things. For me, the real revelation, real so-called transformation, whatever I had, happened when I met Raghuramji. Okay, so my dad passed away, and then me and my wife, both of dads passed away. And Raghuramji was our new dad at that point of time, and he changed our lives. And that's when actually I started learning so many things about yoga beyond asanas, right? Especially the yoga teacher training and everything that I learned, all the aspects that I learned that much more beyond asanas. For example, if we think about now, right? Like as Sriramji mentioned, asanas is a very important part of my practice, but a knowledge perspective, it's a slice amongst many things, right? If I can think about yoga today, I think about 3 or 4 things as part of my journey. One of the things is very, very clearly yoga has evolved into a couple of things. My dad always was not a very, very big believer in terms of bhakti and so on, but he used to teach about philanthropy, and he used to teach about manava sevaya, madhava seva. That's how he used to talk about how to be in a worshipping mode, right? So, but when I listened to Raghuramji about Bhakti Yoga, that was a real revelation to me about Bhakti is about love and letting go of your ego. That's a very, very big transformation. And also listening to a lot of other teachers over time, the definitions of yoga now are more about mind and about action, right? As Sriramji was talking about, right? If I think about yoga, the three definitions first come to my mind are Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which Patanjali says about mastery of the mind. And as Yoga Vasishtha says, yoga, Manah Prashman Upayaha talks about skill to silence the mind. And as in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, equanimity in mind and all the layers, right? So basically, it's all about mind and also about action, right? Because Srini, you talked about, maybe you'll talk about later about that tranquil mind, that strong mind has to be right action, right? And when we look at even Bhagavad Gita talks about your karma shu kaushalam, right? It's about action basically. So my journey is about evolving from physical postures towards thinking about mind, mental strength, and also about action. And also another important thing that my journey is that I'm very, very passionate about people development, if you will, right? In the sense of creating more teachers, because that's the way we can scale. I mean, I've been passionate to teach young kids for a long time who become teachers, and a lot of working with yoga teacher training for a very long time. And that's why I'm very passionate about taking to next level. So that's my journey. And here I'm lifelong learner, lifelong student, and very happy to be part of this panel.
Love it, love it. It's a blessing to to have somebody like Shailesh, where yoga is something that has been part of his very own nature, starting with his own dad, right from when he was a kid, and is constantly evolving and took it to the higher dimensions. And Shailesh always inspires me as his constant pursuit. He was the one who actually introduced me the term of Yoga Sutra that I did not even know, when he already memorized and he used to go participate in the competition reciting the Yoga Sutras. So it's fantastic. So Savita, so what does yoga mean to you? How it has shaped or reshaped your life journey?
Yoga initially, like I think most of us, was just another source of losing weight. That was my definition. Let's get to yoga class, helps you to shed some pounds. That was my idea of yoga. So now being introduced to Yoga Sutra and like how how actually it's one of the elements in Ashtanga Yoga, one of the elements. I think yoga is just mindful of doing anything and everything in your life, just being present, be it from small things to big things to mundane things. So just being present and being one with what you're doing. So that's what I take away off the mat. On the mat, it's just as I like what Srini says all the time. There is always somewhere you can push. This is not like, okay, you got to a posture and that's the end of it. You got to the destination. So it's not about the destination, it's the journey. So today I'm amazed by my own body each time they say, okay, push a little bit further, and how my body does move. I'm amazed. Like, even though I thought this is it, I can't stretch any more. But somehow after a few more practices, it's just, I can go a step further. So it's has been more understanding the theory and application together. I'm able to see how it's applies to anything in life. Like, you feel mentally, this is it, I can't do any more on this. But there is always having that growth mindset, having that saying there is something I can do through this, or there is another step or another stretch I can do at this. So has been my yoga journey. Getting onto the mat is still a big challenge every day. But yeah, keeping that's a habit. I definitely want to cultivate, do that.
And
So
what a fantastic insight, that ability to constantly pursue and seek that infinite, that the push, so that the ultimate destination, infinity. So there is no end. It is a continuous journey. And sometimes we refer to that as prachodayat. It's only the direction. There is never a destination. The journey is the destination. But thank you for sharing that insight. Let me share, some of my experiential reality, and I will try to do that in the context of some real life stories. I would want each one of you to travel with me of this real life story of a friend of mine, who, and for those that live in the Bay Area, and this is a friend of mine who I know very dearly. In 2007, and I saw this this person really at the bottom of his life. I think almost like spent $2 million on the healthcare bills. He was not sure about his own being. He thought, he's always roaming around the hospitals. He was not sure about this thing. There was anxiety, there was depression. There's so much of a negative mindset. And then fast forward, and about 5 to 6 years later, and you see this person being the most resilient and the exuberant, and we're trying to create more of an exuberant being. And some of the byproducts, not the primary motive, some of the byproducts is also healthy, and some of these physical ailments kind of went out of the way. And this is a real life story, and this is a very good friend, and that person is none other than myself. And then the same thing, and I see similar stories of one of my other close friends, and this is a real close friend. His name is Sundar, who actually had an accident where he broke his arms and a lot of different things, and he was never sure of himself. And then he took to the path of yoga, and then he rebounded into the most resilient being. And it's almost like this is his second avatar, right? So for me, I'm seeing more and more of this such real life stories where the life actually took them to a stage where they thought that they were like, there is no looking forward to, or there is like at their, the nadir or their lowest point. But then yoga inculcated or built this notion of resilience in them. So to me, yoga is about cultivating that ability of the resilience in people so that they're always rising up to whatever the life throws at them, whether it is COVID, whether it is the tough work situation or tough family situation, tough health situation. Yoga builds that resilience so that they're always marching forward. That's number one. But from that resilience, now what I'm also seeing is people with that resilience, now they're becoming the second stage of where they're pursuing excellence. Now they are very confident that they can take on any situation. From the resilience, they're moving into like pursuing excellence in the purpose. And then the pursuit of excellence, I'm also seeing the ability to see they're going beyond their own abilities. They're becoming infinite beings. The limitless, their capacity is actually like what Savita said, they're pushing. So they're taking on more missions, and they're expanding the capacity to create bigger change in the world. So for me, yoga is, in a practical sense, is about cultivating that resilient mindset so that they are able to conduct themselves with confidence and the poise in whatever the situation that is, at home, at work, and whatever the situation. And then the next aspect of that is then building on that resilience, pursuing excellence, to then going and increasing their capability. And this is something that I'm seeing more and more, and it's only the yoga that is actually unleashing the capability to see the infinite power within. And I'm a witness, and I draw that inspiration from, I'm blessed that, folks like Sriramji, Shailesh, Ramakant, and many and Michelle Winner, who could not be here today because of the COVID booster, but it is all of these people are imparting this essence in each one of us. So we go from not so sure beings to resilient beings to pursuing excellence to becoming more and more of the infinite and limitless, folks. So that's so one dimension of what I thought, and the best thing is now with that realization, we feel that each one of us have the opportunity to impart this yoga essence to more and more people, particularly the youth. So let me stop here. And Savita, being my partner in moderation, do you want to start with your inquiry?
Sure. Both Sriram, okay, dropping the G's, Sriram and Shailesh mentioned role of guru in their journey. Somebody who doesn't have a guru, where would they start from, like in the yoga journey? I mean, I'm a strong believer in having a guru, but I'm saying somebody who doesn't have the same feeling of like having a guru, or what do you guys advise for them? Or like having a guru makes a difference or not makes a difference? Like, is it pivotal for the change? That's my question. Sriramji?
So you are right. Especially in the tradition of yoga, the role of the guru is crucial. Having said that, a guru can be anybody who inspires you. And when we look in this world, there are so many people that are inspiring. I'm reminded of one of the very famous songs in Telugu composed by a great composer, Tyagaraja, Endaro Mahanubhavulu. That means when you look around the world, there are so many people who inspire you. Sometimes we forget that when we look at the news, right? Because all the spotlight of focus is on all the horrible things that are happening in the world. But truly, there are people who are inspiring. They can be the guru because what they reveal to us is, oh, they're revealing some potential in me who I did not know myself. You see? And to exemplify this, in the Yoga Sutras, there's a very beautiful sutra, Vitaraga Vishayam Va Chittam. That means, in order to cultivate some virtues or some good qualities within ourselves, one of the easiest ways is to identify somebody who already has those values. You can call them a guru, or we don't need to even attach a label to it. Somebody who already has these values and keep thinking about them. And it is like pouring water into a container. The water takes the shape of the container. Like that, when we pour our awareness to them, slowly and surely our mind becomes like them. So when we constantly think of a person who is always compassionate, who is always loving, then in due course of time we become like that, because they tap our potential within us that we perhaps did not realize we had, and that awakens from within us. So we can actually harness the power of inspiration, and that is the role of the guru if we think about it.
So Sriramji, what a fantastic way insight that you provided. A guru is all around us, which is like somebody who could inspire us in different dimensions. In fact, the other day I was listening to a talk where they gave a definition of Jagat Guru, like, who we refer to like Adi Shankara. Jagat Guru means Jagataha Guru Saha or something like that. So somebody who actually treats everything in the world as a guru. That means they're learning from everything, from an animal to the plant to the human being. Those are the people that we sometimes refer to as a Jagat Guru, who are learning from everything in the Jagat. And then once they learn from the guru, that's when they become the guru for the entire Jagat. I believe that's what the way you said it, mapped to that Jagat Guru definition. So Shailesh, what's your point of view on the role of a guru in the yoga there?
Again, it's obviously very hard to add to what both of you said. Wonderful insights there. Just a couple of things from my experience, right? As Sriramji wonderfully said, there are so many gurus out there, and you may not have met them. Still, they can be gurus. For example, when I did my yoga teacher training, when I was going through instruction from Raghuramji, around that time, while I was reading so many other books and so on, I got very inspired by a couple of other gurus who I've never met. One of them was Sri TKV Desikachar, right? I read his Heart of Yoga books, and then next year I was in Chennai in a center just to meeting them. Okay, and another guru I was inspired was BK Sayangar, right? Reading his Yoga Sutras book, and I was in Pune next year, right? So, but basically, you can be inspired by their talks, inspired by their books, and so on. There are a lot of opportunities for sure, right? And when I think about gurus, like what both of you said, a couple of things always come to my mind, right? What can gurus help us with? One of the things I can always think about is, if there is a dark room, they just bring the light on, right? And then also the other thing is when there's a fork, they kind of show you the way, they lead the way. And then there after that, they may be off and then you're on your way. You might find other gurus, you might do other things based upon your sadhana, right? So I think those two things come to my mind in terms of showing light in darkness and also showing the right path when there is a fork, right? But my thought process is today, yes, I mean, you can start doing yoga by watching a YouTube video and then get somewhere, right? But as you start taking your sadhana to next level, right? When you want to, and that's my experience, right? I mean, until Raghuramji came to my life, my knowledge, my practice was, I would say, shallow, right? It went much, much deeper. And then Sriramji, I think you had the benefit of studying under gurus in Chennai at a very early age, right? That's a privilege many of us actually probably didn't go through, right? That's a wonderful thing because the connection with the guru can take you to next level, right? Understanding many, many facets of life, because yes, asanas can take you to one level, pranayama can take you to one level, but understanding of many, many aspects of life, whether it is karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, yoga sutra, ashtanga yoga, all these aspects, right? Once you have a connection with one guru and go to one depth, because going beyond asanas and pranayama is very, very difficult for many people without a guru. Even if you think about B.K. Sayangar guru's instruction, right? They don't teach anything pranayama and meditation for a while until you master asanas. And until 2 years you study with them, then they teach pranayama to you, right? Because they think it's very, very dangerous to do pranayama or meditation without having proper instruction from a guru. Right? So that's why I think depending upon your goals, depending upon your journey where you want to go, the destination, I think it's very, very important to have a guru based upon some of those aspects from my viewpoint.
Love it, love it. This is a fantastic thing. And Savita, if you allow me, I would add some dimensions to it. One is what I realized is there are two dimensions. A guru is, as what Shailesh said, is their primary job is to empower the student so that you basically can be your own self guru, like what Sriramji said, Vitaraga Vishayam Vachittam, which is like they come in, you use that as a prop, you use the guru as a prop to light the real guru within. But if the guru becomes the permanent and you simply become a bard, then that is not the real gurutvam, because you're essentially is like being remote controlled, and you are not really awakening the true guru, the divinity within. But in my perception, the real guru is they just come in and they make a pivot, they light up your candle, and then they step out, and then they come and interject whenever you need. But they're not always in the foreground, right? They're not the one. The basis like just simply follow me, don't ever question. So that at least that's one dimension that I see. And if anybody that comes in is like don't question me, just follow what I say, or at least I don't subscribe to that guru philosophy. And then the second dimension of the guru is it is like everyone brings different perspectives, as what Sriramji said, which is that that different people bring different perspectives, and as a seeker, if you can harmonize and if you can create oneness across all the different philosophies, then I think you are creating a new paradigm yourself. And the third thing that I just remembered is whether you need the guru or not, I think it's all about whether you're ready or not as a student. And that to me, if I go to reflect my own journey, in fact, there is a blog that I wrote of my own yoga journey. I refer to that as my journey as the seed, the need, and the deed. I went to a Gurukul school, much like, Shailesh, where every day we were supposed to get up at the 5:30 and then, practice yoga, but I never connected to it. I was not ready. I thought, signing up for washing my restrooms or the restrooms in our Gurukul was a much better deal than, going and doing asanas or, pursuing yoga. So because I was not ready, it's only much later, but nevertheless, there was a seed that was planted. It's only in 2007 when I felt that there was a need. And that's when I was opening up. As a student, I was getting more prepared. And when I was ready, then gurus chose me. They entered into my life, like the Sri Ram entered into my life and Ramakant entered into my life. I mean, it's almost like a miracle. But I truly believe that a guru chooses you when you are ready. Or at least that's one dimension that I have. Sriramji, anything that you would want to add? Is it right that the student needs to be ready? The vessel needs to be ready?
Sriniji, you said very beautifully. And let me quickly add a couple of thoughts to that. You are right. The teaching itself is an art. The art of teaching is a skill.
Yeah.
You know, I sometimes learned the hard way. When I started teaching yoga, I thought a good teacher is one who gives a generous dose of knowledge. It is like overeating happens sometimes, right? Indigestion happens. Too much knowledge, it becomes so heavy in the head. So then I recall how my teacher used to teach. I would call them teachable moments. That is, he will seize on opportunities where he can interject a very profound wisdom and it will transform the student's life. Let me give an example. So when I joined my yoga teacher, this was way back in 1986. So my initial journey in yoga was, okay, if I'm able to touch my toes, yeah, mission accomplished. I don't need to practice anymore because I'm able to touch my toes. So let me move on to the next asana that I will master. And then once I master that, I will go to the next one. So the point is, I was not very focused on the practice of it. I was not practicing every day. Because why should I practice? I can touch my toes. So that was my attitude. It was like an arrogant attitude I had in my mind. And one day, what happened was, my teacher used to take his students as models whenever he gets opportunities to give lecture demonstrations on yoga. So one day he took me as a model to demonstrate yoga postures. So it was in front of a very large gathering. It was in Madras University. We had about 700 people in the audience. And he made me do a few asanas and he made me demonstrate sun salutation, the Surya Namaskara with variations. And at the end of it, there was a big applause because they were impressed with what they saw. And then my teacher, he said to the audience, see, in order to reach this level of doing yoga asanas and the Surya Namaskar, you need to practice every day. And then he turned to me on stage and said, you practice every day, right? Now, I was put on the spot. 700 pairs of eyes were looking at me, right? And I didn't know how to respond. I simply nodded my head. And I felt very bad about it because that was a not true statement. I didn't express the truth of myself. That hit me really hard. And then in that moment, I made a decision. Okay, from today, I'm going to practice every day. So when I reflect back on it, I really admire the way in which my teacher made that opportunity a teachable moment because he knew that I was not practicing. But the art of teaching, when to give that knowledge when the student is ready, just like you mentioned. And it also reminds me of the teaching of Bhagavad Gita. In the middle of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says, oh, I didn't know that you are such a wise person. He tells Krishna, the 11th chapter, he says, I didn't know you're such a wise person. You could have told me before this war, right? Yeah. So only when the opportunity, when the student was ready, Arjuna was ready only in that moment and the knowledge was given. So thanks for bringing that point, highlighting that point, Sriniji.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, Savita, I think let's actually get to the other core of this thing. So we're all talking about touching the toes and this stuff. Yoga today, particularly with the Western, with all the awareness now, everybody has a yoga mat. It often gets confined to the physical practice. It's all about touching the toes or doing the deepest back bends and more of the exhibition stuff. And as you know, Sriram and Shailesh and many of us on this session today, where we study Patanjali Yoga Sutra to actually understand the holistic nature of the system. So can you give us some insight about the criticality of understanding the holistic yoga system and also the role of Yoga Sutra, Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and why that study needs to be paramount with some parts of it so that somebody could really pursue the true yoga essence? Sriram, anything that you could say is like, in all the schools, the importance of the studying the holistic yoga system. And then if you have any suggestions on how we could potentially add that to what is already happening, the role of physical practice.
Yes, in fact, the synthesis of practice and the knowledge is extraordinarily powerful. Sometimes we do the practice mechanically, but then when we understand the principles behind it, for example, we mentioned earlier that in the Yoga Sutras, only 3 sutras talk about asanas. But in those 3 sutras, Patanjali has given so much insight on the proper way to do the asanas, the mechanics of proper alignment and how to do the asanas with what attitude, that when we integrate those guidelines in our practice of asanas, it profoundly elevates the quality of the practice. So that is how both work in synergy, the theory aspect of it and the practical aspect of it. Of course, we can't just sit and read theory and not practice at all. We can't be armchair yogis. Right? We need to put that into practice. So the combination of that is very profound, and they work in synergy. And that is one word that I really feel, the word synergy. It really captures the heart of yoga, what is happening in yoga, because when we combine the theory and practice, and when we combine the different elements of yoga, such as the asanas, pranayama, meditation, and so forth, all the 8 angas of Ashtanga Yoga, what we get is much more than the mere sum of the parts. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That is the power of yoga, I feel. So it's like buy 2, get 1 free. And what yoga gives us is the perfect synthesis of all this. And we are able to experience, we are able to give ourselves the gift of the power of yoga.
So, Sriramji, you talked about when you integrate, when you synergize, you see it's like, it's greater than the sum of the parts. It results in the exponential or the ananta samapatibhyam, or, unbounded, kind of the yield. But what's the downside? If somebody only goes through this mechanical practice of the physical, but if they don't understand the essence, what are the potential downside of it?
So in my experience, even if someone starts with a very mechanical or a physical practice, sooner or later they somehow get inspired. Somehow they discover that I am not happy with the trinket. I want the treasure now. So that inspiration really strikes. But you are right. We also need to have some caution. For example, if there is ruthless determination to achieve perfection in an asana, I'm going to touch my toes even if it's going to tear my hamstrings. If that is the attitude, then it can create some injury, clearly. So when we bring the safety aspect of it, when we go with the guidelines of the practice of yoga as it is given in the authentic tradition of yoga, then we are helping ourselves to progress in a way that is best for us. Sometimes when we try to transgress too much beyond our comfort zone, then we may not make the progress that we want to. It reminds me of a story. Somebody goes to the teacher and says, I want to reach enlightenment. Please give me a practice. And the teacher says, do this for half an hour every day. You will reach enlightenment in 12 years. And the student, although the student was happy because enlightenment was guaranteed, he thought 12 years is too far away. And he has a bright idea, right? Why just half an hour? I'm going to practice 1 hour a day. So he asks his teacher, will I reach enlightenment in half the time? Right? And the teacher makes a mental calculation and says, no, if you practice twice the amount, you will reach enlightenment in 24 years. So that's an optimal way. The sadhana needs to be done with optimal, like not doing too much, not doing too little. That moderation is needed. And that is where the art and practice of swadhyaya, self-study, self-inspired study, noticing how the body responds to the practice, noticing how the mind responds to the practice. So doing all these practices, not mechanically, but with full awareness. I think that's where the art of swadhyaya comes into play.
Fantastic, fantastic. Shailesh, any dimensions on both upside and the downside? The people, that do the traditional physical practice of, let's say, asana and pranayama, if they study the holistic Patanjali and the knowledge and the right essence of it, what are the potential benefits? And also, if they don't couple with this, what do you see as a potential downsides from your experience?
Yeah, sure. Again, wonderful insights from both of you already. I'll just share a couple of things from my side, right? Like I mentioned, just with asanas, you're able to get to some level. But as Patanjali talks about, if you are able to practice asanas really well under some guidance, he talks about, right, in asanas itself, Ananta Samapatibhyam, he talked about one with infinite. And then he talks about Tataha Dvandva Anabhigataha, right? So you're able to get beyond dualities just with asanas, right? So you can get to some level, but as Sriramji talked about, right, for a complete picture, understanding aspects of Ashtanga Yoga, right, and ability to apply in daily life, right? For example, if we take a look at Yoga Sutras, right, the definition itself of Sutra talks about Alpaksharam Asandigdham Saravat Vishwato Mukham Astobam Anavadyam. Right? In that, it very, very clearly says Saravat Vishwato Mukham. It's full of essence and applicable in daily life. It's about application. That's what Yoga Sutra is teaching us, right? Because any knowledge that is out there, we cannot apply. It's not very useful knowledge, in my view. I'll just share a couple of perspectives, right? When I'm studying Yoga Sutras, as an example, right? You talked a lot about action, because when you, in your podcast, you talked about 5 aspects of body, mind, place, time, and resulting in action, right? There are, even if take Yama, like Satya, for example, right? Satya Pratishtayam Kriya Phalashrayatvam. And Patanjali says a person with high degree of right communication will never fail in his actions. It's about action, right? And Satya can be at 3 levels, right? Whether you are telling truth or lies, whether you are giving up, whether you are holding your word, and then are you holding somebody else's word that gave on your behalf, right? Paroksha. So it can be at that level. And even when thinking about action, Patanjali talks about action in 2nd chapter in Kriya Yoga. He talks about concepts related to tapas, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana, and how just with those 3 aspects, which is related to action, right? A strong austerity, self-discipline, how you do your practice, how you continue to learn from the practice and through gurus, and how you also give best action without worrying about results, right? So I think some of the aspects that you would learn by getting the entire picture is about understanding how it's related to action, for example, right? Because the action of karma yoga really purifies your mind. And that's when actually you can get to next level of getting rid of your ego, loving others, finding divinity within. All of these things happen when there is purity of mind. And that's what Swami Sarvapriyananda talks about a lot of time, about purity of mind. And that comes with a lot of these activities related to action talked about in Kriya Yoga. And coming to the downside, right, as Sriramji mentioned, there's always the challenge about if you're overdoing without knowledge, anything can happen. For example, right, if you have and I think Ashwini ji mentioned he's a yoga teacher, and Ashwini, you're here, thank you for that. So we remember these little things from 10 years back when you taught us, right? For example, if you give somebody a small screwdriver, right, they can get the job done, but the bigger screwdriver, they can try to do it, but they can do a lot of damage also, right? And similarly, if you take a matchbox, right, little match, you can do cooking and things like that, but a fire can damage the whole house if you don't treat it properly. Similarly, things like pranayama and meditation, if you don't learn from a teacher, and if you try to do it yourself by watching YouTube videos and stuff, there is significant downside, because they are bigger tools which can also cause bigger damage if not used properly. Example of a screwdriver, or like a fire, for example, right? So those things are something that experientially I feel that you need the knowledge at some point of time, so that you are not led astray and you don't cause trouble to yourself. And biggest problem is that with half-baked knowledge, you might start teaching this to others, and you're causing even bigger problems in the world.
That's fantastic. Savita, anything that you want to add? Both the upside and the downside.
For my journey, I only see upside at this point of time. I really don't see the downside. But I totally agree with both of them.
The downside is what, when I say downside, if you are not aware of the other yoga knowledge, what are the potential bad things that you could come out of, like the injury that they talked about?
Got you. just looking at, for me, first initially looking at yogasana, it used to scare me. Oh my God, I don't think I can ever do this, or nor I want to try this. What if I get twisted something, right? So having the right knowledge definitely supports the action. So it's like a backbone. You do need that. So it complements each other. According to, I feel it complement each other, and you need to know, as Shailesh mentioned, you need to know how well you can use that matchstick. As your intent for that action should be clear. I think only then the alignment happens. And the way yoga sutras and yoga, Ashtanga yoga is created, it's assisting in every level, so that there is a completion. It's a full circle. It's not just, okay, just to keep on doing asana and don't do anything else. So it's not just about Yama, Niyama. So not pranayama. Like the way it's step-by-step process, it's easy to follow and easy to understand how everything is weaved, as the name says, sutra, together. So that's my experience been. I want to step back a little bit, where Sri Ramji mentioned, I've been in a place where I say, oh, if people want, they can come and ask me. I'll tell them then. That used to be my approach. For what you said, like overdosing the students, and waiting for an opportunity to give them the right direction. But many times it has happened that overdose has actually opened up a window, especially with the time of information era, where there is every information available. Somebody putting out a video about this and me accessing it, or thanks to Google recommendation, but somebody put out, not thinking, oh, this is too much information. If people want it, they will come to me. So I think that attitude, or whatever thought process, changed for me, where I said, no, I think we should share. It's like eating a great meal. You want to share, saying, hey, it's amazing, you should try it, kind of. So I don't see any oversharing anywhere when it comes to good things, absolutely. So what are you, I mean, I know your thoughts, but what do you guys think about this in the era of information? How do we navigate of over information, or lack of information in some areas? Shailesh or Sriram?
Yeah, I think that's a very good thing. Let me use this and then offer one insight connecting back to the previous thing, and then I'll try to connect both of them and then do it, right? One is, when I studied Yoga Sutra under Sri Ramji, what I really realized was, if I did not have the understanding of the Yoga Sutra essence, sometimes, the physical practice can lead to a different motive for pradarshana. Like, you will build physical excellence and you use it for different motives. Like, for the grandeur pradarshana, right? To get some motives, of, you display this physical excellence to get some wrong things. But only when I understood the Yama, Niyama, and the real essence of the journey of the yoga is to tadadrusa, to invoke the divine qualities, to transcend the kleshas. So you're not living for yourself, but rather you're letting the divine being to express your thoughts. You're here to the well-being of the others. The Yama Niyama grounded, so that you're not using it for, oh, I should be, in a brahmacharya, I should be in the aparigraha, I should be in these things. So the motive actually shifted. The definition of the yoga is to invoke the divinity within. I'm nothing but the divine. That understanding helped me to go beyond the practice, go beyond. It's not about the toes, it's not about the display, it's about realizing my infinite potential. That actually put me in a much better path. And if I did not have that awareness, it was always about, using this to get somewhere, maximizing my profit, if I were to do this, right? Only when I had this ascent. So, but the upside of this is like, really, then as a yogi, you become, your existence becomes for the well-being of others around you. And if you do not have this awareness, the downside is you're trying to use this skill to maximize profit for yourself. That means you become a liability. So now coming back to the sharing, now the question that you asked, again, the subtle difference that I see is when you share truly for the intent of serving others versus serving yourself. When it becomes a darshana versus a pradarshana, the way I look at it. When the darshana is to provide a window of a point of view, truly representing, hey, this can actually be the well-being of the others. When it becomes a pradarshana, it's self-serving. So you always have to use the thing is like, who is it serving? When you're doing the sharing, is it for the service of the others or service is self-serving? So when you use that, the darshana versus pradarshana, or at least that's how I kind of look at it. So now with this kind of a point of view,
Ashwini ji mentioned in the chat, it was nice. She said, we always overshare with our kids. That is so true. But Ashwini ji, I overshare with my daughter, but when I hear her repeating the same thing with somebody, I know it has stuck to her somewhere. My oversharing has not got wasted somewhere, or I mean, for her own well-being, right? She would repeat what I had said to somebody else or friends or whatever it is. Then I see, okay, my constant sharing has not gone down the drain or not gone wasted. So I think, as you mentioned, that it should be for the well-being of others. I think
exactly.
The intent motive. When the joyful is, it's all, I feel it's always be intent for others. When brings joy and with how much, like, how much you enjoy, you're sharing with the intention of sharing the same joy. That's my thing. I don't know if
can I quickly add something, Savita ji? The reason I brought this up, I agree with you exactly. This is what happened with my older son. He would be always protesting and fighting, but somehow he, I was giving him this overdose. And then in 2017, there was a parenting lecture by Swami. Actually, it was a workshop by Swami Bodhananda. And Swamiji called these teenagers to give their perspectives on parenting. So it's the reverse, right? So he said how parenting should be he was only 17 years old in 2000 and, sometime around that area. So he gave exact account, not 2017, 2007. So he gave an exact, lecture as if I was talking. It was like I was listening to him. It was as if I was talking, and he said, these are my ideas. I was so happy because he not only digested them, he fought with me throughout the process, but he repeated exactly what I said. So they digest, they make it their own, and, they repeat. So it was very, very beautiful. Just to share that.
I think
thank you.
That's a fantastic insight. The greatest win is when somebody owns that it's their own. That's when you succeeded. Right? They truly, because when they own it, because it's truly for the well-being of them. It came from the person of not of self-serving, but rather truly intent for that. And then that's how they were able to own it. So fantastic, Ashwini ji. And in fact, I was going to reach out to you. You're going to be on the panel for some of the subsequent sessions. So watch out. Watch out. We are all watching out for that. So coming back to this, Shailesh and Sriramji, this notion of if you're not learned the proper Yama and the Niyama, the physical practice, the motives could be different. And are you seeing that, potentially being the downside where people are not really manifesting the true intent of the yogi, where we are here to exhibit our divine qualities, that's our true nature, in the service of others? And are we seeing that, without that essence, are we seeing that danger happening?
So we see that in the legends. For example, Ravana was supposed to be a great yogi, but because there was no foundation of Yama and Niyamas, all the power that comes from yoga, it is like what Shailesh ji mentioned about giving a matchstick to someone who is not very responsible. They can create a lot of damage. So it really, perhaps that's why Patanjali gave the Yamas and Niyamas, living a life of integrity, the foundations of ethics, as the first two limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, because that is essential. Also, all the limbs of yoga, they help each other, as we saw in the synergy. the more we practice asanas and more dedicated we are in the practice of all the other limbs of yoga, automatically our inspiration to live a life that is based on yamas and niyamas, automatically that calling will come to us. Just like how when we are committed to our asana practice, our meditation also becomes deeper. Like that, in any anga, that any limb of yoga where we practice, it also helps us to align more ethically in our life. For example, I remember when I taught a meditation workshop, this was back in Houston. So one of the participants told me, so she, whenever she gets angry, her daughter used to tell her, please go do your yoga asanas and then come and talk to me. You see, they discovered that the parents are nicer people after the practice of asanas, more ahimsa they demonstrate. You see, in fact, that is one of the great gifts that I've discovered. When we practice yoga, it is not just a selfish thing. Okay, I want a more healthy body, I want a more clear mind. We're actually giving the best version of ourselves to everybody's lives who we touch. So that is a great learning, an eye-opening experience for me.
Shailesh, anything that you want to add about the criticality of the Yama, Niyama grounding, and also if that is not there, it could potentially the physical practice can lead astray and create a not so great world.
Sure, Srinji. I think just a couple of things to add to what Sriramji was saying. First of all, Savita ji, your question about information, I don't think we answered that. But Sriramji always says all this information out there on Google everywhere is WMD. Okay, you all know what I mean. Weapons of mass destruction. He mentioned that so many times. Okay, so unless it's used properly, it can be WMD. So I think I'll leave it at that for now. Okay. Coming to yamas and niyamas, absolutely agree, Sriramji. Just a couple of things from my experience. What I say is that many times when we study Ashtanga Yoga, right, you see pictures that it's a ladder, right? That you do yama, then do niyama, asana. It feels like a ladder and samadhi at the top, right? But if you start thinking about it, yes, there are limbs, but also they're portrayed as ladders sometimes. But Patanjali and a lot of other gurus very, very clearly say that the first two steps, Yama and Niyama, have to be part of the entire journey, all through the journey and forever, right? Even when you reach to Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi states and so on, Yama and Niyama have to be part of the journey. It's not in that sense a true ladder, right? If you think about it. Because in third chapter also, Patanjali talks about in Vibhuti Pada, you might gain a lot of siddhis. And if you don't use the siddhis properly, even Buddhism also, Buddha talks a lot about it. You got a lot of siddhis. If you misuse them, you can just fall from the top right to the bottom, right? If you misuse them, right? So that is one thing that at least I can realize that these have to stay through the entire life. And if you don't, lot of even I mean, Ravana is a perfect example I'm just giving. But even in modern day, in the last 20, 30 years, if you see, right, there are gurus that we know. A lot of people followed them, right? Have fallen down from the grace because they did not follow yamas and niyamas, and we know them, who they are, right? So I think it's very, very important. That's why that this has to be ensconced within you. You have to practice it, you have to preach it, and it has to stay for life. And if you don't, again, things can happen. Because even if you take Yama, the first one, Raghuramji also talks about beautifully, only when you start with outside interactions in this world, and you have that world is a beautiful place, and then the interactions are beautiful, then you can start an inward journey. That's when step 2 to 8 is inward journey. Step 1 is slightly outward. That first outward journey of environment and people has to be there. You have to be content within, then you can go inwards. And that's only it's possible. And that will continue to keep that step 1 and 2 throughout your life, throughout your journey.
What a beautiful insight. So we're going to I'm going to ask the last question for today's session. And again, I want to remind everybody that we're planning to do this as a 10-part series. There's so much to explore and learn the holistic dimensions of yoga. The last question for this today is, we all know the criticality of yoga. Yoga is about allowing everybody to reach their full potential, to pursue excellence, to be more joyful in their journey, and that needs to be more whole wholly integrated, which is about, the Ashtanga Yoga, particularly rooted in Yama and Niyama, and then that is a constant practice. Unfortunately, the challenge right now in today's contemporary parents and the kids, that they don't seem to have time. They don't seem to have time, and they're always often busy, and sometimes they may not really resonate. The value of the yoga is not so obvious. They may want to actually go schedule a piano class. I'm not saying that piano is not yoga, but they might want to go to some other gym or other thing. But yoga always seems to be last option, except for some select parents, like perhaps Ashwini ji and some other times. What do we need to do? Because this seems to be the biggest thing. Oftentimes when you do the yoga camps, we only get 10 people or 12 people, and we're always fighting to get people's attention. Whereas other things, like if I want to go to a Bollywood dance or other things, there are more kids that are joining. So when this is the particularly living a life of integrity, pursuing your own internal excellence, creating the designing excellence in the world, when this is the core need of the hour, but somehow we are not able to grab the top attention of every parent and every kid. Why so? Or any insights or any suggestions that we should
Shiniji, even I wanted to ask you the same thing. So even my son sees me doing yoga, but he never, inclined towards doing yoga anytime. So even though it is like, he knows the benefits of Surya Namaskara, he knows how, as Savita called out, right, we all do for losing the weight. Maybe in my perspective also I'm doing on the similar lines, but my son, he is always pressurized, he is always in the peer pressure, he is always trying to achieve something in the college. So how can I explain to him, or how can I put it in simple words, what this is going to bring benefits to him? I'm really failing here. Even though I practice, I'm really failing here. So is there a way, what you suggest? Because I see him, all the time in a pressure. I see a lot of pressure, maybe education pressure, or he wants to be top of the class, that pressure. He wants to build the body, maybe that is another pressure, whatever. But he's always in a pressure cooker kind of situation. So how do we cool, he is just 18, and how do we cool, um, a young person like my son or any youngster in the similar situation?
Mira, I understand totally. If Srini, if you're okay, I can
No,
not
please.
answer,
No,
but I just want to share.
Yeah,
I just want to share the same experience,
Mhm.
similar experience. What I have discovered is, as a parent, with my parents are avid readers. Like, we had every book possible in the house. I remember growing up with encyclopedia in the house, but all I could think was, oh my God, such a heavy book. That's all. Could never got into reading. But through the journey of life, I picked up books. I picked up audiobooks. So I feel that samskara of you practicing will never go waste. You know what I mean? That they watch you, how you manage stress, how you juggled everything. I think that will get to them. I feel kids are like boomerang. The further you throw, they will come back somehow, to the same path. But I think constantly telling them, actually it has backfired on me. Instead of you doing what needs to be done, that's what I've realized. Like, go on the mat, I do the yoga, and my daughter comes on, oh, I'm not able to concentrate. I said, you want to join me for pranayama and meditation? No, I don't want to. Okay, that's fine. But I think the more we show them, as it's a pill to eat, the further they run up. Instead of showing, as they said, Dad, you go and do yoga and come back, I think that will resonate in them over time. When they're to some degree, they understand, oh, maybe I should try that recipe, what my dad used to do or my mom. They came into a bigger, calmer mind. I think that you need to let them figure out to some degree, and not run constantly to help, but show how to do it yourself. Be the example. That's where I have come. Now I don't tell her, even though, you know, I'm itching to tell her many times, but I hold myself and I say, okay, what can I do now? What can I do to show? That's where I have come, because constant saying has not worked out anywhere. That's gone.
Love it,
Sorry,
love it.
Shailesh. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Actually, that's be the change that you want. Don't preach. I think that's what Anil is also saying. Anil Super is saying in the chat box. Sriram and Shailesh, I think, I know, you've dedicated your life to the mission of spreading the message of yoga. I'm sure whatever we all talk about is something that we all struggle with. I think what is that alternative things that we need to do so that more and more people can resonate and connect to the essence and take to the practice of yoga, so that they just create excellence in their own world?
One thing perhaps I can add is that the practice of yoga creates time, if I can put it that way. So going back to the point that you mentioned earlier, our schedules are packed. So adding half an hour more for the practice of yoga seems to be a big sacrifice to make, or perhaps we don't have the time. That's how it feels. But then when we practice yoga, what happens is we are much more productive in the remainder of the time, because the mind is at peace. We are able to do things more efficiently and error-free. We don't have to remove the mess that we create because of lack of awareness in the mind. Let me share one story from my own life. Again, another teachable moment, thanks to my teacher, Yogacharya Subramanian. You know, many of you are familiar with one of the rat race in India called IIT JEE. So there's a joint entrance examination. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, right? So I was a rat. I was in that race. So I was preparing for this joint entrance examination for like 4 or 5 years. And about 2 days before the actual JEE, the joint entrance exam, I was totally stressed out. I was a wreck because I was cramming so many things and reading last minute reading. And so as the tradition in India, before an important event like an exam, we always go and seek the blessings of our teacher. So I met my yoga teacher 2 days before my JEE. Immediately he recognized that I was totally stressed out. And then he told me, on the day of the joint entrance examination, you please come to my house. We are going to practice yoga together for 1 hour, he said. I thought, how is that possible? It's the day of the exam. And you're asking me to devote 1 hour. I can as well spend the time reading more and cramming more. That was the first thought that I had. But he was very adamant. He said, you better come. It's going to help you, he said. And his words were true. I went, we practiced yoga for 1 hour on the day of the joint entrance examination. After that, after the asanas and meditation session, my mind was so clear that during the exam, I was able to give my best. It was an eye-opening experience for me, because we should not forsake yoga when we need it most. You see, that is when yoga can be most helpful to us. We can harness the power of yoga only in such moments. Reminds me of another saying by Mahatma Gandhi. He used to say, oh, today I need to practice twice as much meditation because my schedule is so full. Because so many important tasks are there, this is when I should not forget meditation. So that was a profound eye-opening experience for me, that yoga actually creates time. We are able to accomplish much more thanks to this investment of half an hour or 1 hour of the practice of yoga.
So this is an experiential truth. The thing is, it doesn't look intuitive at the beginning, but it becomes part of your intuition only through experience. This is an experiential intuition, and I think we all can vouch for it.
I should also mention that I was able to, pass the JEE with flying colors. I got a rank which I never even dreamed of. So my teacher's advice and wisdom, I'm thankful to even to this day.
I think we need to package more of these user stories, more of these stories. And Shailesh?
I agree. Sriramji, thank you for sharing this. I think me and Meera has to show our kids this piece at least. This piece at least.
Actually, this one is a very profound. There are more and more of this stuff. Shailesh?
Yeah, so again, wonderful insights from three of you. I'll just share one thing, maybe extra. I mean, a couple of things I noted down is obviously walk the talk that Anilji, Savita was talking about, very, very important. The kids have to see you in the house doing stuff, right? That's very important. The other thing is, Sriramji, I've told many of my friends, families, and yoga colleagues that it's absolutely important you practice yoga when you're very busy, right? The busiest days, the stressful days is the most important days. You have to practice what you find time, and that resonated with people after practicing, and that's exactly what you're saying, and I'm very, very happy to hear that. So the other thing I would say in this context is that Meeraji, I think you had a question, right? When I taught kids yoga for a very long time. Initially, I used to teach the classes. Kids used to come, go. I mean, they used to attend because parents used to ask them and so on. But at some point, what I did is I created some sort of levels for them, just like how you would see in swimming or karate and martial arts, right? Even though we want to say yoga is not competition or anything like that, but still what happens is kids have to be motivated, right? Everything they go to, swimming or piano or anything they go to, there is some level they go to, right? So I created some levels which are like 6 levels, which will take almost 2 years for them to get there if we study regularly with Yoga Bharati at that point of time, right? And that actually really made so much difference because so many kids and parents came back, they could see their progress, and kids were motivated because they had a test to pass, they were getting ribbons, they were getting awards, right? And that continued to motivate them. So I think that's one of the things also we have to think about while we impart this, but at a younger age, right? Kids need something like that, and that continues to motivate along with us creating the environment at home.
So fantastic. I think, in fact, for everybody to take it up, own it up their own thing, they need to be able to have measurable success milestones, to be able to do it. And in fact, now I'll share some of, along the lines of my own journey. My capacity has increased tremendously, only through the practice of yoga. Like, for example, if I have a keynote to present, that day I would definitely do a 90-minute practice. In fact, I remember when I was, when I joined Apple and when we had our annual dev conference, and that was supposed to be one of the most important, conference, and everybody was looking for me because I was like supposed to be the guy. And I was like, what are you doing? I'm actually doing yoga. And everybody's like, what are you doing? And then when we were at the backstage in the room, my entire team was there and we were preparing for it. Everybody's heart rate was like at 130 and 100 whatever. So stressed out. For the 10 minutes before the kickoff, all I was doing is I was actually conducting everybody to do pranayama. And the people were like, just, the people that were running the stage, they were like, they could not believe what I was doing. Everything was done and we were supposed to unveil our new vision and so on and so forth. All we were doing is pranayama. And that's when the magic actually happens. Your ability to focus, your ability to, bring creativity, to unveil the bigger power within you. It actually happens when you actually do the practice of yoga. And this has become my experiential reality with all the travels that I do. I sleep in the hotels, 180 days. But the thing, when I'm traveling more, even in the airport, when I have this, that's where I would actually go get my yoga practice. So this is something that I think what is also happening is when we be the change that I see, we often attribute yoga to the wrong motives. We are joining yoga for weight loss, or at least, I don't know much about the weight loss thing, but what I would say is like, if we want to do the weight loss, perhaps, we should do more things, right? Nutrition and exercise and other things, right? Because when the kids of today, they have a logical brain. So when they do the logical brain, they could probably think that, weight loss could be accomplished in a much better way. Is the food and exercise and the muscles, they actually come back with better science. But when you actually bring it down to the essence, yoga is about creating harmony of the mind so that you're more joyful, regardless of what the weight is. And that focused and harmonious mind is going to allow you to create exuberance. That's when, and then bring it down to small experiments. Before you go to your recital, do a 10-minute of pranayama. Or some of those things. I think that those are the things, that actually come in. And I now see the kids who watch me for 15, 20 years, where I was actually going through the journey, but they saw from me going from A, where I was struggling and anxiety and the health issues, to be on the other side of the funnel. So at least that's a success story. But now they come out and reach out to me. It's like when they have focus issues, it's like, what can we do? And they're looking for small tips, repeatable tips that they could measure and see the benefit. So we need to come up with more and more of these user stories. Like, I think, I would love to make a case study of Sriramji's JEE story and other things, because those are the things, are small nuggets, success stories that you could actually do it. And then it comes with an action plan. And then the action plan is not like commit for 2-3 years. You can actually instantly do pranayama before any important meeting and you see the benefit. Or as Sriramji would say, like, or even do some simple dharana exercises, some balancing exercises when you're stressed, so that you can bring back you into the center. So I think there is more opportunity for us to be more creative. As Shailesh said, create small, repeatable, with immediate results. And then with more and more, I think we all need to come out and then share our success stories, like as profound as JEE. And that's when, people would take up to these experiments and then yield more successes. So I think, we have a lot to offer. So on that note, I know we are also about 1.5 hours into the journey, and I'm sure, we have so much more time that we could explore on this very topic. But before we adjourn, is there any 1 or 2 questions, anybody from the audience, that you would want to open up for? And before I say this, how are we doing on the time, Sriramji and Shailesh? Okay, the time is good. So that means, when the guru says he's available, that means he's enjoying. So we'll all, so anybody has any questions? I know, Raju, you've been itching to ask a question for a long time. Do you have any question for us?
No, I don't have any questions. So I told you that I would try my best to not to ask any questions, because I'm doing a lot of yoga these days.
So that is the yoga. That is
so
the
I controlled. I'm successful in controlling myself today in asking questions.
So
It's a great topic, and it's very useful. Youth Excellence Center helping the youth. Youth means tomorrow's future. Dawn from the road, 10 years after today's youth is tomorrow's future. You are building the future. I'm very proud of this organization. And I wish there should be a great participation. And I definitely wish that this organization should help this future youth. And most importantly, that Meera's concern about the kids, the influence of external influence is dominating more than the internal influence. It's not about your tricks and tips, no matter what you do and all, the external influence is able to hijack your kids right from your laps with your cell phones and all those things. So that you should be aware of. The world is, welcome to 21st century. The world is different. And, we have to figure out the ways to tackle that problem for a better future. Hey, thanks a lot, Sri GS.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Raju. One other thing that the thought that occurred to me, from my experience, I have 2 daughters. One is 24, 25, and the other one is 19. I see this youth. One thing that I also realized is I did not succeed when I said, yoga is the royal way. But there, if I look deeply into it, if they're practicing singing, or Meera, I know your son participated in rowing, that is yoga. Just not create, alienation, what we do with, our asanas and pranayama, that is itself is yoga. No, asana is like when they're doing rowing and when they are fully enjoying and getting into the flow state and pursuing excellence in the harmony, that is yoga. When they are practicing, flute, or in the band, when they are pursuing excellence in their activity, that is yoga. So I think what we need to do is we need to meet them where they are. When we create this alienation that yoga means it has to be done this way, but that is not what it is. Yoga is the Yogastha Kurkarmani, any skillness in action with the harmony, you basically like, hey, by the way, when we do the youth camps, we actually acknowledge them that most of you are already yogis, and everybody is like wondered, why? Because most of the kids today, they are established in Yama Niyama principles than the adults because they are unconditioned. Acknowledging them, rewarding them that they are exhibiting that. Yoga is not about doing it the ancient way or whatever we are trying to do it, but whatever they are doing, pursuing excellence and skillness and demonstrating skillness in action or being harmony, that in itself is yoga. So I think that is one dimension that we need to acknowledge. So so that we meet them, we bring them inclusive into it. Don't create the separation of what we say is the good one and then you are not there, but rather integrate is the way to go. And to me, that's the right.
Inclusive. Yeah, no alienation. It's not that we are trying to alienate. They themselves are getting alienated because of the generation gap and all those things. We have to analyze the problems. The problems. You're right. What you said is right. Absolutely. I'm agreeing. But how the alienation is happening is, everybody is blaming the parents. That's not true. It's the
I don't want
unknown factors.
Raju, I don't want to take the sides. There is no parent versus this stuff. This is
no.
Hold on. So that's basically what it is. So this dimension of Sriramji and Shailesh, recognizing the yogic behavior in what they are doing in their own life, and then building a common anchor there, and then introducing some complementary techniques. Do you have any thoughts on that approach?
Yeah.
Sorry, Raju. No. I'm asking Sriram and Shailesh.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I really like the words you said, Sriniji. So whatever we are doing, whether it's rowing a boat or practicing music, we can bring yoga there. Allow me to give one more analogy that came to my mind. My teacher always used to give this analogy. When people approached him and they complained to him, "Oh, I don't have half an hour to practice yoga. So please tell me, give me like a short capsule, give me 2 minutes yoga." Maybe that's what they're expecting in their mind. And then my teacher always used to give a story. Okay? The story is set in the stage of Egypt. It was about 2,500 years back, or even more years back, several thousand years back, where the pyramids were being built. Okay? So all the slaves are carrying tons of those rocks, those heavy building blocks to build the pyramids, and the slaves are using their muscle power. They're getting exhausted, and they're pulling these big rocks up the pyramids to perch them on top. And coincidentally, in that exact same moment, there was a profound moment in history that happened, in the history of mankind. Somebody invented a wheel. And they had this bright idea. Wow, let me share this invention with them. It's going to help them. So they run to the people who are constructing this pyramid and say, "Hey, I have something good news to tell you." And you know what the slave said? "Don't you see I'm busy? We are working here. Don't disturb us," right? So that is the exact thing that happens when we give them the practice of yoga. Sometimes these bright ideas, they don't make sense. "Oh, I'm busy. How can I put one more half an hour into my daily slot," right? That's how I felt when my teacher said, "Come and do 1 hour of yoga before the JEE." So this is what happens. This is the power of yoga. It's a bright idea. It's really going to change the quality of our life. And sometimes we forget that. Just wanted to interject that little story.
That's fantastic.
Sriramji, we expect you to come up with more youth programs and conduct some youth programs so that the future could get benefited. We know you're famous for giving greatest programs, so I'm looking forward for those.
Yep, absolutely.
You, Sriram, and Shailesh. Thank you, GS.
Yeah. And Shailesh, anything that you have to offer as an insight? In other words, recognizing the kids' yogic behaviors, even without explicitly calling them yoga, but when they are pursuing excellence in harmony in whatever they do, whether it's rowing or music, and then build a common ground and then bring it to additional tools. Any thoughts, suggestions? Have you experimented with that?
So, Srinji, I think that's a wonderful insight, Sriramji, on the pyramids and the wheel. Yeah, heard for first time. Very beautiful. Srinji, I think you talked about some of the aspects you mentioned about doing pranayama before some important activities and stuff. That's definitely something that I've seen. But other aspect is that, in interest of time, I know people are dropping off. So, interest of time, I'll just share just one thing is that when I want a lot of folks to do some practice in a short time, right? I give them a 7-minute video on YouTube, right? That's the time they just go do it, right? Then they get to Mac, then they like it, they might do 15 minutes that day, right? So these short videos, which are already in YouTube, people can use that. That's one thing that I've seen that help. The other thing is in daily life, right? Again, you can look at it from angles of, are they applying yamas and niyamas in different facets of life, right? Whether it's a school also, they can think about, are they applying principles of ahimsa and satya, for example, right? And a lot of other aspects, the way we learn santosha, for example, are the kids following the santosha definition we taught them in classes, right? So I think yamas and niyamas, a lot of kids in my classes have memorized them, and they can memorize and they can recite them in sleep. So are they actually at least following to some extent, right? So those are some of the things that I think about beyond just the yoga practice generally, how you can complement the bigger picture of what yoga brings to the everyday life.
Love it, love it. One last thought that I would also share with something that we are experimenting is that the same yogic essence is also revealed in other, whether I would say choice of the words, I wouldn't say like whether it's a modern, but other, like, other sages in different parts of the world. Like, for example, Mihaly flow, or, Japanese Kaizen kind of a framework. So what I realized is when the same essence is communicated or saying like, hey, this is what Mihaly flow theory is, or this is what Japanese Kaizen, which is nothing but Patanjali's Pramanyatvam Parinamanyatve, small steps lead to the transformation. That's the Japanese Kaizen model, which a nation was rebuilt, after the World War II. Or Mihaly flow theory is now being practiced almost in every corporate and the school kind of an environment. But when you look deeply, they mapped the same yogic essence or the Gita essence, or Carolyn Dweck's growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. That kind of maps to what you're talking about, Santosha and prosperity mindset, and always be that entrepreneur. So one of the other things that we could potentially explore is unifying these different frameworks so that it appeals to the current generation youth, because they don't want to view themselves as a citizen of one sect. They view themselves as more universal beings. So when we actually bring the essence of more frameworks and then say, like, that's what even Veda says, ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. So when we bring them like, hey, it's the same thing is being realized and recognized by, so many people, that perhaps will appeal to the contemporary youth, because they would want to see them as more global leaders, particularly in today's setting, where every one of us need to represent, the global citizen, what yoga essentially means. So let's stop with that thought, for now, and then we'll pick it up from here, and then we're going to explore more and more dimensions of this yoga, and then also some of the contemporary frameworks and other deeper dimensions of the Yoga Sutra in the subsequent sessions. So that's the thing. And Sriramji and Shailesh and Savita, if you have any closing thoughts, we would love to hear your closing thoughts.
Yeah, I would like to thank Sriramji and Shailesh ji for making this time. It used to be my favorite word. I don't have time. But somewhere I read everybody gets only 24 hours. That was like a brick on my head. Yeah, everybody gets 24 hours. Nobody gets an extra hour any part of the world. So I think we all need to take an inventory of our time, and we should allocate what adds value to our life, mostly. I think that's my takeaway. And thank you so much, Sriramji and Shailesh ji, for participating in this panel, and a lot of insights. I wish my daughter was here to listen to this, but I'm sure that's going to happen one day. And Srini ji, thank you for arranging this and making me part of this. And thank you everyone for attending. I know it's a Saturday evening, so I think time well spent today, for sure. Thank you.
Sriramji, and your closing thought, and Shailesh.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot from the thoughts that were shared. Thank you, Shailesh ji. Thank you, Srini ji. Thank you, Savita ji. And thanks everyone. And also Ashwini ji for sharing your thoughts. I also learned so much from this discussion. And I feel so blessed to be part of the team. And when we talk about the Sutra, Vitaraga Vishayam Vachittam, pour your thoughts on people who inspire you. And when I do that practice, constantly I keep reminded of Sriniji, because the passion with which his own practice of yoga, and as well as the passion to share the joy of yoga with others, it is just amazing. So not only is Sriniji so busy with, he's a CEO, and now dedicating this amount of time and effort and passion with the world, sharing the joy of yoga, it is extraordinarily inspiring. So thank you for what you're doing, Sriniji.
And it's all, you know that, right? And I tell you this, you operate within me. So all the credit goes to you. Back to you. So Shailesh?
No, I think I echo what Savita ji and Sriram ji were saying in terms of thanking everybody. I'm honored to be part of this panel. Srini ji, thank you for giving the opportunity. And so many of you, again, have been part of my life, my journey so closely, and very happy to see all of you here. Hopefully, you learned something. I learned a lot for sure. Looking forward to next session. Thank you very much, and looking forward.
Love it. So everybody, let's do the final chanting. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thanks everyone, and hope to see all of you again next week, the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.